The artist just entered.
Where is he?
Night time is falling. All we need is understanding. Just one touch, the evening is so undemanding.
Hi there. Welcome to Blog Rebellen interview today with Joel Sarakula. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you. Hey.
I just have to think about your name. It's not that common. Your name. Where's it from?
It's like an everyday name that you hear on the street every day.
No,
it's quite typical.
Yes, yes, you say so. You're just kidding all the time with me.
It's where's it from?
Yes, where is it from?
My parents. So it's going to be really silly. No. We did a little bit of an ancestry trace on Sarakula, and it's like a Finnish name.
Yes, it sounds like Nordic.
Yeah, it is.
But you come from
Finnish.
Australian.
Yeah, and my dad's parents were Ukrainian and sort of born in what was the Polish Empire at the time, between the two world wars. While it was part of Poland, but somewhere in history their name came down from Finland to Ukraine or Poland. You know.
Wow.
Yeah, that's my dad's side of the family.
Yes.
And Joel, they like the sound of the name. They like Billy Joel.
Billy Joel.
Yeah.
Billy Joel.
One of the great artists of the last century, and someone I'm not ashamed to say I like Billy Joel.
Nomen est omen. You know this?
She's always woman, certainly.
No, nomen est omen. It's a Latin saying. What do you say? Latin saying, like the name you're wearing is the same, which has come to you. How do you translate nomen est omen?
You wear the name that you were given. You mean?
Yes, exactly. But today we are here to talk about your.
We should talk about names more. I think.
About your background.
Say we're talking about names.
Yes.
What's your name?
What's your favorite name? We're here just to talk about your new album, Love Club.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just tell us what Love Club is about?
You mean the name of Love Club?
No, the name Love Club.
It was. The idea. It kind of was like organic in a way, but my songwriting started to become really influenced by writing romantic pop songs, which is not something I've ever really done before, because they often become cliched. And in fact, I've really avoided ever writing sort of romantic songs and these kind of love songs. And it just started. I thought, well, this feels natural now. I'm ready to express myself in that way. And so I was just looking at all the themes and facets of love. And eventually they sort of had a cohesive feel to them, and hence that was one part of why it was called Love Club. So there's some my variations on the theme of writing love songs, which is something I've always shied away from because I saw it as such a ridiculous cliche. But I guess I was trying to look at doing an original spin on that, or my version of that as well.
Oh, so it is.
And I wasn't afraid to be emotional and expressive as well. Maybe that's what changed within me. It was nothing to be shameful about, to write some an honest romantic love song.
So you open your heart and.
Yeah, it all sounds incredibly cheesy now, doesn't it? Kitschig.
Kitschig.
Yeah.
Yes, but kitschig is sometimes good.
Yeah, and this is why I try to avoid the pitfalls of writing songs like that and try to put an original spin on it.
Yeah.
So, it's modernized as well, or at least there's a contemporary aspect to a lot of those lyrics,
And when did you recognize that you already said that you didn't write about love songs because it didn't feel so right to you, and then you came up with that. When was the time when you felt so I have to start write about love and at least produce a whole album about love songs?
It was never like one conscious moment that led to that. It was just sort of the songs that were coming out of me were a bit more defenseless, a bit more kind of naked in a way, the songwriting. And I thought, well, that's kind of an aspect of love, isn't it? To be unarmed you know, and just to be you know, express yourself. So yeah, it's not, they're not all romantic love songs ultimately, only really a few of them are. But I guess it was also talking about, you know, the idea of love is that you can be express your emotions. So they all have elements of that, you know, and a truthfulness, I think.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple of songs which is more flights of fantasy, you know, and you know, there's different aspects, but it's kind of a theme that sort of roughly revolves around the album, you know, with one or two exceptions maybe.
Talking about a club, love club, who would you invite to join?
And that's an interesting question. I don't know. A theoretical love club. I mean, the idea of the love club was that it could be open to everyone, you know, and people from any background and any age. It was sort of non-discriminatory love club, and that was also an idea, because I thought we're in an age now where people aren't really communicating with each other so naturally, and people with different opinions are entrenched in their camps, and there's a breakdown of expression and communication, and so yeah, and a couple of the songs sort of have that's. I pull that into the lyrics, especially Understanding and In Trouble. It's essentially where that's coming from, like an idea of the breakdown, the current...
Understanding In Trouble are two songs of your album.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Who's done?
Check it out.
Listen.
Understanding and In Trouble are two songs on the album. And they're very much about like this kind of current breakdown of communication and in our political climate, you know, so... That was a thing. So I guess calling it Love Club as well was maybe like just a response to, you know, all the horrible things that are happening. You know what I mean, in the world.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'll just call it Love Club. You know, because that's, and it's not necessarily simple or silly lyrics, but you know, I think there's like, it's a thought through process which I came to arrive at all the lyrics. But I think it's a nice label just to say, to stick on something and say this is a rejection of all the sort of negative media
things coming up,
and these kind of entrenched oppositions which are just sort of growing and festering around the world at the moment. This has become like a political debate. Sorry, I didn't realize.
Coming to this awful things and bad things happening in the world. I know that you traveled around the world for getting inspired for your album.
Yeah.
And there's one story that that there was some interesting and also some dangerous moment in your traveling, and there was something about car kidnapping in the Caribbean you was involved. Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, I mean, that was a long time ago, but yeah, I was a victim of like a carjacking in St. Martin. That was 12 years ago now. So yeah, that was like a life awakening kind of like episode, because obviously when you have two people with guns to your head for 45 minutes, and if you walk out of that situation, it can be a real wake-up call. So I only look, well, I'm obviously glad I survived, but I'm also not glad that it happened, but appreciative of things that changed in me as well after that event, so, and taking appreciation for what's around, and a clarity to it. Like I was on a high for like 2 weeks after, like just on the most ridiculous, you know, like high.
Traumatized, maybe?
Well, yeah, you could say for a few days, but like after that, I was like elated. I was high. I was I'd never been that happy in my life. Just full of ridiculous positive energy. Thankful for everything and everyone, and realizing that everything is connected and has a purpose. So it probably changed things in my brain because of that. There's definitely, I think, there were lessons I learned that I hope have improved me, and it also sort of gave me more of a sixth sense, or to appreciate my own sixth sense, you know, which is like come in handy a couple of times since, you know, in situations that could have become dangerous as well.
And coming to your album back again, and maybe the feelings you're transporting in your album, and the mood is more the 70s based. And why did you choose the sound of the 70s to tell your stories?
I mean, I sort of grew up on that music via my parents' record collection, because they were of that vintage, you know, growing up in the 60s and 70s. So our living room was full of records from that era. And
which one is your favorite one? Just
artist or record?
Artist and record.
There's sort of too many.
Which one was the most inspiring to you?
I don't know. I don't know if I can't just limit it to one all-time favorite. You know, I could say a few people. You know, like
just say a few people.
Okay. Well, then, like, if I was going to say one master list, then I don't know. Obviously, the Beach Boys and Sly Stone would be in there. Todd Rundgren. They're Zombies. They're people I can really go back to time and time again.
Okay, so I didn't want to interrupt you. It just was
not, and it's not necessarily that my music
okay.
sounds like that as well. But I don't know. There's a lot of names. I can't. It's hard to stop there. But we could be here for a long time if I didn't stop there.
So, and this was the inspiration for you to choose this mood for telling the love stories, the 70s.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, again, it wasn't a conscious decision, but I guess just the way I write is heavily influenced by that era of writing, and also like the revisionist stuff that came, like people like Erykah Badu, who was writing like that, 20, 25 years later. She's really important as well. It all just sort of comes through the wash and recycles and grows, and I tried to also update the sound through production techniques, and it's pretty heavily processed as well, and that's kind of a common thing to do in this day and age, and update also the relevance of it by doing really contemporary themed lyrics.
Yes.
So yeah, you can't obviously be stuck in the past, and you can't recreate a false past. But there's also fun trying to do that as well, and that's also for me part of the enjoyment of the game. Although I don't want to be seen as necessarily just a retro artist, I think that would be kind of limiting. But yeah, it's a huge influence.
So you say you catch the present and take the past and mix it up, and then this is your music right now. And there's this part you're talking about love in the digital world, and how it is, and frankly spoken, the time of digitalization, sorry, Pixelization is more better, thank you. For humans, is it a curse or is it a blessing right now?
I don't know.
How does it feel for you?
I'm not Ray Kurzweil. I'm not like a commentator on what the future's going to...
It's just your opinion. It's just like you wrote a song.
Like, yeah, I wrote, there's a couple of songs on there that sort of relate to that a bit. We Used to Connect and Cinnamon Surprise. They're both sort of on that basis of the current way, the current era of romantic dating, Tinder and, social media and apps. And it's very clinical, it's very sterile, it's obviously very different from every time in the, until, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, that's just, you would not meet a person like that, you generally, meet them through friends or in a social activity or in a bar or something like that. So, yeah, so talking about that specifically, I don't know what's going to happen. It's weird.
It's kind of clinical and not natural. Like I think Tinder meeting
to most people to most people who grew up before that happened,
yes, and
whose relationship and love life developed before those things were invented, it probably feels unusual. Like I met this guy a couple of months ago I was talking to, and he was 22 years old, and so I'm from from a different era in a way, but like Not that I'm going to say my
that
age,
old.
but and so yeah, I've never even had Tinder or anything like that. I've never used kind of social media apps or anything in for like romantic dating or even just making friends or whatever. But I was talking to this guy, and he was 22 years old, and his whole emotional, well, his whole love life or relationship life or whatever you want to call it so far, the way he meets his partners or even just a date, it's all only evolved from Tinder. He's never met anyone outside of an application.
Oh my God.
That's pretty weird, isn't it? I just thought that, and that's a whole generation of people. Obviously not all of them, but there is like that's a thing. It's like there could be a whole generation of people that's the norm. So I don't know what that leads to in the future.
What would you suggest to someone who's 22 years old and never met others outside of Tinder?
I didn't suggest anything to like. We just, it was funny because we just were talking like it was a really interesting conversation because like it was obviously incredibly different life experiences, just polar opposites really, and so it was just really it was I learned a lot just hearing about his experiences and trying to come to terms with that, and I can't. No, I would never. I'm never going to like judge anyone or recommend anything that's for anyone at the age of 22 to do. Like that's not my part to do. But it's more just sort of observing how peculiar that situation. It's like what a world. And
What a world, yes.
And there's obviously really great parts to it. Because it's the thing with Tinder or dating apps. It links I guess it links your interests and your suitability on paper, and how you could connect, but it doesn't have any. You can't transfer a synopsis of physical or emotional spirit. That's only something you can really feel when you meet someone for the first time, I think, and and there's something in that. That's what has brought humanity to this point. Like the reason why humanity hasn't, well, even though we often seem to be on the verge of wiping each other out, like it's brought us this far, like the sort of animal instinct, or for want of a better term, but that physical kind of presence and physical understanding of each other's emotions. So it's interesting to see a generation growing up that's not the basis of the forward progression of what do you call it? Just lost for words now.
Physical contacts.
Yes.
What do you think about the time, the meaning of time for this generation?
Man,
maybe they don't have any time.
Complex.
Yeah, maybe.
I feel like I need a smoking like a pipe. We should have pipes
we have
here.
Something here. Excuse me, I don't know.
We just sort of sit here. It's like very philosophical conversation.
No, because I think this is not that philosophical. When you think that if you can find your match and you don't have to live with them 2 years to recognize that this person is not the real person you want to live with,
Right.
Just to find out, oh my God, I didn't know that he likes pizza with peanut butter.
Oh, to learn that stuff afterwards, you mean?
Afterwards,
yeah. Well, and that's
you can go through. I know 2 people actually who are in love with each other, use Tinder, and now are together. So they are this side. So
they're going to say the opposite to what I said before, which is like, well, but the animal instinct and the initial emotional pull might be really valuable for connecting to people, but maybe there's nothing to back that up. Maybe there's too many differences in style and opinion and politics and religion and taste and blah blah blah. There's so many things that make up our lives. But I also think that if the initial physical connection is that strong, and there's some crossover and similarities, then that's ultimately going to be quite powerful, I think.
Okay.
Well, in my experience, it has been. But I'm no doctor of love, even though I called my album Love Club.
Maybe
Doctor of Love. There's a title.
Love. Wasn't it Bootsy Collins is the Doctor of Love?
He definitely is.
Yes, he is. Bootsy.
Yow.
Thank you very much. We're finished. I'm done.
I'm done here.
Everything is said. I think we have time. We got philosophical questions and
I think we've covered
and your album also.
I feel we covered a lot of ground here in terms of
Love Club. Welcome to the Love Club. Thank you very much.
Welcome to the Love Club. Hope you enjoy the album safely in the comfort of your own home.
Bye.
Bye bye.